Frankenstein, Dracula, werewolves, phantoms, zombies, Gorgons, mad scientists, abominable snowmen. These are the monsters that they have created. Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Ingrid Pitt, Veronica Carson, Oliver Reed, Madeline Smith, Barbara Shelley, Michael Gow, Hazel Court, Bartine Beswick. These are the people that faced the horrors. Jimmy Sangster, Terrence Fisher, Michael Carreras, Peter Sasty, John Elder, Evan Jones, Anthony Hines. These are the people who created the horrors behind Hammer Studios. Welcome to Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors, your gateway into classic horror cinema, brought to you by Broken Lighthouse Pictures and Something Wicked Entertainment. Hello everyone and welcome to Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors. I'm your host Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner-operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Events, and I want to welcome you to our program today. So, if you've been following us, or following this podcast, you will realize that what we do is we take an individual Hammer Studio film and we kind of critique, analyze, have a discussion about it. Now, this discussion can be a critical analysis of the film, or it can be just me and my special guest having a really good time talking about vampires, werewolves, gorgons, and everything else that Hammer did in the 60s, 70s, and 80s for your enjoyment. This being said, I do like to thank my guests when they come out, because those people kind of enjoy Hammer films just like I do, and like I hope you do, which is why you're listening to this show. So without further ado, I want to actually introduce my guest for today before we go and delve into the movie for the night, and that would be Dave Watkins. Dave, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me back on Hammer Horror. Looking forward to talk about this movie.
And the movie we're going to be talking about, everyone, is The Gorgon from 1964. We are delving deep into all the movies all the horror movies that Hammer Studio did in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and we hope that you've seen the film and or enjoyed the films. And even if you haven't seen the films, you should hopefully enjoy the program and then go out there and find the film to watch it for yourself. That being said, these are not spoiler-free conversations, so if you want to watch the film first before listening to us talk about it, go out, watch the movie, then come back and listen to our conversation about it. So let's get started, and let's talk about some Gorgons. So Dave, kind of give me your impression or your first time seeing this film, or what you think about this film in general, first of all.
Right, yeah, this is, I'm going to talk a little bit during this about some things about this movie that are a little off.
Okay.
But that being said, I really like the film. But there's some stuff to be made fun of in this film. But it is, I actually really think it's a really fun Hammer film. At the first time I saw it, I felt like I saw it a long time ago, or at least part of it. But the first time watched it all the way through, was maybe a few years ago. I bought this Hammer set, and it was one of the films in the set. That was the first time I watched it, and I guess the biggest, this one has both Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing in it, so that's something that really sticks out with this one in particular, because they're not always in the same movie together, but they're often in, they're kind of the heroes of the Hammer films, or the big names for most of them.
Yeah. The thing about this movie is, I, like you, got the Hammer set that this was in, and then I thought I hadn't watched it, but when I was rewatching it, I realized, oh wait, I have seen this movie before. I just never knew it was a Hammer film. And I hadn't seen it but probably once when I was a little kid, because the image of the Gorgon itself has only been ingrained in my head from two movies: Clash of the Titans and The Gorgon. Uh, and
Right.
so I remember these two images because they're very different as a kid, mostly because in one of them it was claymation with the snakes moving all the time, and then the other one, the snakes just don't move; they just kind of sit there. That's how I remembered I'd seen this movie.
Right. Yeah. 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 This I get into more of that with the Gorgon and all that, with the not moving, but it's here in a little bit. But that is kind of a maybe a bit of a disappointment with the film, but there's a lot to like in this movie as well, especially the acting.
I think that this is an interesting film because essentially the film switches the protagonist so like multiple times because they end up killing the protagonist. And then
Right,
it
right,
moves
yeah,
on.
yeah.
It's like the family is the family that this is all happening to is more or less the protagonist. As it moves from the father to the son, and then of course it started off with the first son. I'm trying to remember the first son's the name of them all. Uh,
Yeah, his name's Bruno Heiss, the first one.
Heist.
Yeah.
Yeah, Heist. The Heist family.
Heiss, I think is that. I don't think there's a T in it. It's Heiss, is Heize.
Oh, okay. So I
Yeah.
spelled it wrong. So yeah. uh,
Yeah, it's just German or something, I think, but
well,
yeah.
it's interesting because yes, it starts off with the first son, which is Bruno, and then Bruno is killed, and then the father comes to question what happened to his son in this small little town of which Peter Cushing plays Nemiroff, the town doctor who is also hiding deep secrets about the town and the superstitions within the town. You might get a little feeling that this is the superstitions is whether it's a Gorgon or Dracula and vampires. There is this superstition that kind of runs through, and you can replace the Gorgon with a vampire really easily in the story.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
uh,
let me read you something from the opening credits before. So right before
yeah,
it comes on, here's some narration they put at the beginning of it. It says, which they don't read out loud. It just comes up on the screen. It says, overshadowing the village of Vandorf stands the castle Borski. From the turn of the century, a monster from an ancient age of history came to live here. No living thing survived, and the specter of death hovered in waiting for her next victim. So that's the kind of heavy-handed stuff it says right at the beginning that nobody ever reads that, I don't think. But
I no, I read it. I read it this time, and I paid more attention to it this time. But it's one of those things that I've noticed in a lot of these Hammer films. They kind of had that little scroll to introduce you to the world that you're about to be integrated into. Because all of these are period films, and despite the age, because it's a period film, you kind of go with the flow.
yeah, I think when I was like, listening to a commentary, and the guy doing the commentary thought that the reason they put that at the beginning was because they don't mention the castle Borski for a long time in the movie, and it's very important to the movie because that's where the Gorgon lives, and so it's
Mhm.
telling you that, and it even shows it in pretty close to the beginning. There's a cutaway to it, but that's where the Gorgon is apparently lives, and the people in town are don't go near the castle. The castle looks badass, but they're so scared of the Gorgon and the superstition that they don't go near it. But as far as like the first guy, the Bruno Heiss. So it starts out, he's not really the first person that gets killed because
Yeah,
it starts out he's in there in the studio and he's drawing. He's an artist. He rents this kind of like house that apparently he rents it every year. And the house location that he's in is like a really big location in this movie. Just one of the
really big location.
four locations that's it's really big in the film. But he's in there painting this girl or his girlfriend, and then she starts telling him that she's pregnant, and then he freaks out and he says he's got to go tell her father. Like right then, it's the middle of the night. He's going to go tell her father, and he bust out to go do that. And then so she freaks out and goes after him, and then she's the one that dies
Yeah.
because she's in the woods, and then she sees the castle Borski, and then something comes up behind her. She turns around, and it's all kind of camera point of view. And then there's these weird holes on her head, and then she falls out of the screen.
And then of course, I can't remember how Bruno comes across her for some
Well,
reason.
it doesn't show him again, but late the next day, he's found in the woods hanging.
Hanged. Yeah, he's been
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, he's
but
found who was hanged, and of course, the city who was trying to cover up the death of the girl kind of blames it all on Bruno.
yeah,
The
right.
so and then of course that leads to the father showing up. Um,
Well, before that though, it's when they bring her body in there to see that Peter Cushing's character goes to look at it, and it also introduces the Carla Hoffman character. Then there, he's in
prison.
this weird, yeah, he's in this weird institution. It's like a in this town apparently there's a medical institution and there is this house and there's a castle. But there's a lot of weird stuff seems to be going on in the institution. But they bring him in. Peter Cushing's character seems to be running things in the town, and first off he talks to the police chief, played by Patrick Troughton, who played the second Doctor Who. Did you notice that?
Oh no, I did not know this.
Yeah, he's got a pretty big part in this, but he's basically the main inspector who's he's talking to him, and they do seem to be like they're maybe covering something up. But then what happens? They bring the body in, and they're pushing it, and they bump into something, and then the finger falls
Fingers.
off the body because and then he goes to look at it, and it's turned to stone. And that's the Gorgon has turned that body to stone. And then the inspector comes out, and he's like, "Are you going to do an autopsy?" And he's like, "An autopsy on a body turned to stone?" Yeah,
Which is, and I don't know what number this is. If this was number six or number seven with the bodies, because I started losing
yeah.
count with the numbers.
Well, they say that like seven deaths in 6 years. I don't know if
Okay,
I don't know if that's included the new one or not, and there might be eight included in that one.
yeah, but this is not something new they had not seen. But the inspector's comments about whether or not they're going to do an autopsy does come off as slightly a humorous take
Yeah,
when Nemiroff is not humorous in this movie at all.
right.
Like,
Yeah,
dead serious. Like, this is just another incident that needs to be covered up in our town, so to speak.
yeah. But that's but it's interesting when they find Bruno hanging in the woods, and this is like there's marks on his forehead that look to me similar to the girl's his girlfriend's head, but I don't think they are the same. But it's very
All right.
mysterious that he's in the woods the way that he is. I don't. He couldn't have saw the Gorgon because he would have turned to stone. But there's one of two options. He either hung himself or the townspeople like killed him, and they try to make it look like he hung himself.
Interesting. I didn't even think about that. I always just assumed that he hung himself from the guilt.
Yeah.
You're right. Unless
That's the
he
most
hard.
likely. It's
Yeah.
most likely. I think the marks on his head are very odd, though. I mean, where would they come from?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's a good. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. You only see it like 2 seconds, so it's a very quick shot, and it doesn't linger. But it's I don't. There's no explanation. There's a lot of these things in this movie are left open to interpretation, or there's no explanation for certain things that happen.
No, that's because Peter Cushing it talks in double talk. He said
Yeah.
he in this movie he does a lot of double talk where he says one thing, but he's meaning something else because he's hiding so much in this movie.
His character's really interesting in this one. It's a very complex character, and it's a lot different. It's a lot different than his Van Helsing or his Frankenstein characters because those both Frankenstein tends to lean more towards evil, and Van Helsing more towards good. This one's kind of in the middle, even though he's hiding things, but he's not. He's more of a tortured, complex character, and as it gets further into it, you start to understand why he's what he's doing. You kind of start to understand why he's doing things the way that he's doing it.
Good. Yeah. So I agree with you on that one because in this was much. I like this character in this movie for Peter Cushing because when he plays Van Helsing, it's very kind of like one note almost. He's playing the same character so many times. It's just kind of one note. And of course, in Frankenstein, I love his evilness. It's probably one of my favorite roles that
Yeah,
he's ever
yeah.
played where he's evil in this. And this one seems like he's stuck in the middle because he has good intentions, but it's kind of like, well, I can't. I know I know it's a Gorgon, but we're going to get to some of the other reasons why he hides so much and why he doesn't reveal so much because he knows more than even what he's telling the police officer. he has theories, and he wants to uncover those theories, but then also he doesn't want to because it may lead to something he doesn't want it to lead to, and that's what makes his character in this film so interesting, and
Yeah.
as opposed to some of the other characters he's played for Hammer in other movies.
Yeah, I really like his performance and just the way that he delivers it. And he does the thing that he always does with the props. He's got a bunch of props, and he really hams it up with the props almost every scene he's in.
Especially when he's in his operating room. The operating room scenes are so different in this movie than they are in the Frankenstein movies. I,
Yeah, yeah.
he actually looks like a real doctor in this one for the most part.
Well, apparently he went and I think he visited a medical institution and talked with somebody about how to do an autopsy. So when he did that scene later on in the film, that it looked more like he was doing a true autopsy, which that's something that happens too before the father shows up. Is there is a crazy woman in the institution who turns out to be kind of a red herring,
Yeah.
but she comes. I think her name is Martha. She comes down the stairs like acting like a fool, and she's hurt, like I think bit someone or scratched her face or something, and then he tells them to put her in a straitjacket.
No, no, Martha is a red herring, and she's a very good red herring because when I first saw the movie, after I remembered I'd already seen this movie before, and realized it was a Hammer movie. I like, oh yeah, Martha is the character that you think is the Gorgon, but isn't really because it's a little. This isn't like a straightforward movie. It's got that air of mystery to it because the Heights. I'm gonna pronounce this wrong every time. The father is trying to figure out what's going on.
Wait a minute. I may have been mistaken on that. I think yeah, you're right to begin with. It is Heights. I was looking at yeah, my bad on that. It's sorry. It is Heights. Sorry to mess you up, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So the Professor Heights. What is? I always kept calling him Professor. Uh,
It
Jules.
is a professor.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Jules Heights. I just called him Professor Heights. The
Yeah.
father.
Yeah. The
When he
father.
comes,
Yeah.
he's the most logical in trying to figure out what's going on, and the talent people do not want him there. Like at one point, they actually try and throw stones through windows to get them to leave, and
Yeah.
uh,
That's something like they were talking about on that Curse of Frankenstein, where they're like they didn't want the torches. They're like we can't afford villagers with torches, and suddenly in this one in 1964, that's been like 6 years I think since that one. They do have villagers. They got torches. They actually throw them through the into the room and catch the floor on fire. And then he lets the other guy put it out with a broom. The thing catches on fire like crazy, and he just like doesn't even try to put it out. The other guy he's helping him like starts putting it out with a broom of all things. So it's
Yeah,
like
but the ideal behind those scenes is actually really amazing because what you get is the sense that this is an outsider. These townspeople have a sense of what they believe is going on, and they do not want this outsider in there. First, it's the villagers, and then it's the police officer, the police chief, who walks in there and says, "Well, you need to leave, and we're not going to help you at all. And if this is your warning."
yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah. He's like, get it, yeah, pretty much get out, and
yeah.
yeah. So that guy, the Professor Heights, his hair looks goofy. He's got like this really goofy wig on. It's like standing straight up. So I like his performance, but that hair, man, it's like, what is going on with this guy?
Well, it's about the same kind of look that I saw with
Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee.
Yeah,
Lee's
yeah,
character
yeah.
Christopher Lee's character just looks so much not like Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
It's just funny.
I know it is kind of funny.
Yeah, you're following the father for a good 20 minutes or so before,
Yeah.
as he's slowly discovering what's going on in the town. But he discovers it way too late, unfortunately for him, because he's kind of pulled towards the ruins when he hears the sounds at night. And I do want to say that the cinematography and the production design for the sets is freaking amazing because when you're watching the first Heights go through the corridors and down the alleyways and then through the woods and then back to the ruins. And the way the shadows are used and the camera used in the ruins is freaking simply amazing. But he goes to the ruins.
I want to throw this out there too. So it is directed by Terrence Fisher again, and
Okay.
but really, I saw like the Evil of Frankenstein recently. He didn't direct that one, and it's a lot different look than these. we'll get to that when we talk about that film, but you can definitely tell Terrence Fisher's direction and Jack Ashner's lighting. And when he's going into that, there's got all these fall leaves kind of blowing around. It just looks really cool. And when
It
it's
looks
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
It looks
And with
cool.
the creepy thing is when he's sitting there in the house at night and he starts hearing the Gorgon call siren sounds calling to him. That's some really creepy stuff.
It is, and that's what I like. And I forgot about that whole sequence until I rewatched it. And he's slowly being called by her, and I like the fact that they take his time to go out of his house, go through the woods, and then end up at the ruins, which you're going to see multiple times throughout the film. So it's really cool whenever we go to the ruins, and then of course he sees the Gorgon because we all know it's a Gorgon, but we don't actually see the Gorgon in detail yet.
Yeah. It looks a lot better when you don't see it very good.
It does. It does.
It's so creepy. He's inside that castle ruined, like yeah, but then it's behind a column, and it's obscured, and you can hardly see it. And it's a lot more frightening. And you see it pretty good in a wide shot, but you don't see a lot of detail. But at that point, it still is very, very scary looking.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is that he sees the Gorgon, he stares, and then he slowly turns into stone because he did not stare long enough at first. So and this is really tragic part is he slowly makes his way back to his place, and I can't remember his servant's name, but he gets back there to his servant, and he tells the servant to make sure that he's going to write this final letter because he knows he's dying. Make sure to give it to his son, and it's like, damn.
Yeah,
We
and
thought
it's
that this guy was
yeah.
going to be maybe our protagonist for a while, but then he ends up dying and slowly turning into freaking stone. Um,
It's a very effective scene when he sits and writes the letter. It it is probably like you say he didn't look at the Gorgon long enough, but it does seem to be a discrepancy on how long it takes somebody to turn to stone in some of the scenes. Sometimes it's immediate, and other times it's like for this instant, it could be the sheer willpower of forcing himself to go back there to write the letter. But
mm,
he does come in, talk to the servant when he could have been writing the letter, but he calmly explains it,
yeah,
sits down and writes the letter. But it's like, he don't know how much time he has, and he eventually runs out of time while he's writing the letter.
yeah. I think ends up writing 3 pages of his letter,
Yeah, I think he's going
which
for
is
a novel. So, but
well, it's enough to convince the son when the son arrives when he hasn't heard back from his father about his brother. So the brother Bruno's now dead and framed for a crime he didn't commit, and then of course his father dies, and when Paul
well,
gets there, jeez, I almost forgot.
yeah.
Paul's,
I think we didn't mention this though. About 20 minutes in, before the father goes to investigate the castle,
yeah,
he calls his son and talks to him, and we see Christopher Lee for the first time in the film
yeah, we should probably
briefly.
mention that.
It's such a short scene. And the weird thing with this movie is that on the opening credits it says Christopher Lee first, Peter Cushing, both of them the same title. But Christopher Lee's maybe got 20 minutes of screen time at the most. Peter Cushing's in the whole film.
Yeah.
But apparently, there's two different versions of this movie
Really?
where of the title sequence. Where there's another one where it's flipped around. I guess in some territories, Peter Cushing's name appears first, but in territories where they thought Christopher Lee might bring in more money, they put
Oh,
his name first. And so apparently, the one on this disc that we got has Christopher Lee first. But
I can see that because Christopher Lee did a lot of films in a lot of different countries because he could speak multiple different languages. So I would not be surprised if they did that in some of the territories in which he was more popular than Peter Cushing ever was.
but
That I like
yeah.
surprised of.
But he appears there, and you don't see him until maybe 50 minutes into the movie again. This movie is I think it's about an hour and 26 minutes
Yeah,
long.
yeah. Yeah, but he in this movie, unlike the Dracula movie, his presence is felt a lot in the last 30 minutes of this movie.
Yeah, like you said before, he's got this huge mustache. He looks like Albert Einstein or
He
something,
looks
but
like
he's
Albert.
tall, and he's got this crazy wig on. He's got old age makeup, but it's a very fun performance. Once he busts in there, it's like a it's like a almost like it really like takes the energy to a whole different level once he gets in there, and right when it's needed too.
I think that is probably the greatest contribution to the movie because it's such a somber movie all the way through, especially with the characters and the fact that the Heights characters, either the father or the son, are going through this town, of which there is a Gorgon that is more or less seducing people by, with her siren call, and it's it's not like Dracula. Dracula is a very exciting movie, whether you have Christopher Lee as Dracula or as Peter Cushing as Van Helsing. Those are exciting characters in those movies. This one, it's kind of like it's got that slow burning tone, and then of course Christopher Lee comes in and changes the dynamic of that feeling and that tempo
Yeah.
of the movie.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And like it's definitely welcome once he comes in. It's I would have liked him to been in the film more, but he does make up for it in the last like 25 minutes of the film.
Oh yeah, he definitely makes up for it. But the thing is, he's not the main character, and the Paul character, when he comes in, he really does give the presence of being the main protagonist, which is which should happen. It's a little sad. I think it's 20 something odd minutes in the film where we really get to Paul when he's there. But when he
Right. Yeah.
shows up, it's almost immediately that him and the Carla character have this connection, and that's what kind of drives a lot of the movie until we get to towards the end.
Right. And it's there's like a tragic love story between those
Yeah,
two
a
characters, and
really one.
she's a mysterious character. She's played by Barbara Shelley, and she's hanging out with Peter Cushing's Dr. Namaroff,
Yeah,
and she appears to be working in there, but there's more to it than that, as you discover later on. But she apparently at some point had an amnesia, and he kind of she still kind of has it. She doesn't quite remember who she is, but he's just kind of been taking care of her the whole time.
yeah, yeah. And that's one of those intelligent things about this film. A lot of details are slowly sparse throughout the entire movie, so that's why I was saying that there's that mystery element to the film, um, because not only is Paul trying to figure out what's going on, and to prove that there's actually a Gorgon there, because that whole idea was planted in his head by his father. Uh, but he also realizes there's something wrong with this town that's covering it all up. And of course, you have Peter Cushing's Nemiroff, who has his own motives for doing what he does. And then, of course, Carla not realizing her entire past. Now, we don't get that aspect until later on because she doesn't seem concerned with her past. It's when um, Christopher Lee's, his character's name?
Meister, it's like
Meister.
Professor
Professor
Meister.
Meister.
Yeah.
Carl Meister.
Carl, which is Carl's like one of those names from the Hammer films that just keeps coming back up.
Yeah.
That and the other guy's name's Paul, so that's those are two of them that they always use in almost every movie. So
So yeah, it's really cool when Meister comes in and he's like the Sherlock Holmes of everything. He decides to actually solve the mystery with Paul.
yeah,
It's like Paul couldn't do it by himself because he had roadblocks by the people in town, which is interesting because, like I said, when Paul gets to the town, very first night, he hears the sirens call, and he goes out and ventures out. And instead of looking directly at the Gorgon, he looks at her reflection in the water, which is a very cool freaking shot, by the way. And
well, he first sees her in the door,
yeah,
and then in the water. But yeah,
yeah, but I think in the door sequence, he doesn't really realize what he's seeing until he sees her in the reflection. So, um,
yeah, yeah.
and that could be wrong. I could be wrong about that, but the way it's is played is that they mention that the only reason why Paul looks bad but hasn't turned to stone is because he didn't have the full force of seeing her because he was looking at a reflection.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I mean that's what happened there. And it actually like later on, Christopher Lee's character, when they're talking about it, he says when Perseus beheaded Medusa, he guided his bow I'm looking. He gilded his bow. I'm looking at her in the. He saw her in the shield that he
Yeah,
carried, and so that's kind of how where that came from. Now, what's interesting about the the Gorgon in this one's called not called Medusa. It's called
it's the third one.
Magerna. But the weird thing is, Magerna isn't. If you look in Greek mythology, she's not a Gorgon. She's a Fury, which is completely different. And when Carla, at one point, she's talking to Dr. Namoff when she's reciting the note, because she
Yeah,
goes into the office and she memorizes the note, and she says their names were Tissapone, Medusa, Magerna, Magaria. I'm not saying that right, but her Magaria. But Tissapone is also a Fury, so it's kind of weird that they decided to do that and not use the
interesting.
actual, because the actual Gorgon names were Medusa, Stenso, and Ure, Ure, Euryale. Yeah, yeah. So those are the Gorgon names. It's weird that they did that. Maybe they thought that it sounded cooler, and they know. I guess they figure everybody knows that Medusa died in Clash of the Titans.
Yeah.
So they didn't. That's maybe why they didn't use Medusa, and they thought the other one sounded a lot like her. So
Despite the fact that it's really like the spirit of the spirit of the Gorgon that inhabits someone.
right, right. What's weird about the Furies though? The Furies do have snakes on them, but they're more like a vengeance thing, and they don't turn people to stone. It says that they pursue and punish those who have committed serious crimes, and they enforce natural law and moral order. But they do have snakes, the eyes that weep blood, and sometimes wings or dog-like features. So,
Hmm.
which has nothing to do with it. I mean, it's similar because of the snakes, but
Yeah.
they don't turn people to stone like the Gorgon does.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting that they did that change because I was not aware of that myself. I do know that there was a difference between the Furies and the Medusa or the Gorgons, but I just never kept it in my brain the names of any of them except for Medusa because of Clash of the
Yeah.
Titans.
Yeah, well, yeah. What was funny is like I didn't notice it at first, but then I was just looking up the Megara, and I was just like, what? I was just looking it up, and I was like, she's not even a Gorgon. She's a Fury. And then when I noticed her saying the dialogue about the other one, I was like, they picked two Furies and one Gorgon. They didn't even I guess they just thought they sounded
It
cooler.
sounded
I don't
cool.
know. Yeah, it's like, and they do. They're a little easier to say than the other ones.
Oh my god! Yes, yeah. They probably just did because it sounded cooler.
Yeah.
But once Paul sees a reflection of the Gorgon, he's in the hospital for I can't remember
Yeah.
how long they say he's in the hospital.
I think it's 5 days, but that's one of the reasons why he's not very effective before Christopher Lee gets there is because he gets all jacked up from
Yeah,
seeing Moderna. Damn, I'm butchering that. But seeing like the Gorgon in the water, sees a reflection. So he's really jacked up. His hair's gray. From there on into the end of the movie, it's like got some gray going, and he's just weak after that. He can't even think right.
yeah. But
And
that's the
and he
time.
falls in love too suddenly.
Yeah,
So
he falls in love. So he falls in love with Carla, which
he's got all that bad stuff going for
he's
us.
got the bad stuff, and yet still falls for him. Oh my god! But that creates almost for the audience's eyes a kind of love triangle between, or what is perceived as a love triangle for a while between Dr. Nemiroff, Paul, and Carla, because Paul believes that the that there is something going on between them, or he is in love with her, secretly in love with
He,
her, which is
I think, yeah, I think he is though. I see like a couple of things that he does that to me kind of looks that way because at
I
one
always
point,
thought it
while
was like a daughter father daughter thing.
nah, 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 he's definitely got something.
You think so?
Yeah, and I can tell you why too.
All right.
There's one scene where she's talking and he leans in, gets in her personal space, and looks like he's trying to kiss her, and she like backs away from him.
Does he?
Yeah, it's like during the scene where she talks about the letter, he's like, yeah, there's that, and then also when Paul comes into the office, and then he touches his hand.
Yeah.
It cuts to a close up of Peter Cushing's face, and he looks very like jealous of that.
I kept I kept thinking that was more or less because he's Paul's an outsider who doesn't understand their ways. But you could be right about it. I got to rewatch it again.
Yeah.
Damn
Well,
it.
I think the hand thing could be that. It could be that he wants him to leave and he's concerned about her safety. But him coming in, I mean, he looks to me like he comes in and tries to gets in her personal space and tries to lean in towards her, and she actually kind of pushes him off and moves to the other side of the room. And I think he does that twice during the film.
We'll have to rewatch it again. Okay.
But maybe that was all there for red herring purposes because there's
Just like
something
Martha.
different going on. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing we keep bringing up the red herrings because there are a lot of red herrings going on because the film is trying to misdirect our interpretations and our feelings about the
Yeah.
characters by giving us something else to think about. Like we're never going to think that the Gorgon is eventually Carla if we believe it's Martha. You know.
Right, right. And
Uh,
it's a very good redirection until Martha dies pretty early out of nowhere.
yeah,
And
yeah,
no explanation about how she died either.
yeah. I thought that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
They don't explain. Like I think he does an autopsy on there, but he doesn't. They
Yeah.
don't explain what happened to her.
He
She
does an
escapes.
autopsy on her, yeah.
Yeah, she escapes. She escapes, and then she's dead. I was like,
Right.
that's
And
interesting.
there's some weirdness between him and the other guy, that Radoff guy, who's
Right
kind of
off,
the
yeah,
orderly. And he's the Radoff guy's mad at her, and he says he wants to kill her, and he tells him not to. But it never. I mean, he may have killed her, but you don't know if he killed her or not, or maybe it
no,
was a subplot that got cut out or something. But
you're right. Yeah, I forgot about that. You're right. That's an interesting character to have as your orderly slash henchman.
yeah, yeah,
He doesn't seem to fit with
yeah.
Nemirov's ideals there. Like Nemirov doesn't come off as someone who's like he's got evil intentions. He just feels like he comes off as a character who's stuck in a town that just wants to cover up this monster that they have there that they don't want others, outsiders especially, to know about. He doesn't seem evil. Like
Yeah.
he warns people to leave. you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but he does have that guy working for him who's
Yeah.
definitely got that guy's got some bad intentions, but he does try to. I mean, he does try to have that guy kill Paul at one point. He comes at him with a knife and tries to kill him.
Yeah.
So I guess he technically did try to do that, but he's in deep, I guess, with the Gorgon and all that in a way.
Yeah, yeah. While Paul has been laying up in the hospital, and regaining his composure, and then he eventually leaves the hospital. And this is the one scene where Nemiroff does see that there is a connection between Carla and Paul because they grab each other's hands, and he looks at it, and then he kind of turns away, and that's and then it goes from there. Now I can't remember how soon after that uh, uh, Meister shows up because I know Meister shows up to see how badly Paul looks, but I can't remember how much
Yeah.
time in
So
between.
yeah. So there's two other scenes before he
Okay,
shows up.
okay,
He shows up like 50 minutes in. So Paul goes to dig up his father's grave, which is hilarious.
right, yeah,
Like every Hammer film, the grave's like an inch deep.
yes, I
Digs it
noticed
up.
that too.
That's how they always do it. So the grave's like maybe 5 inches deep. He opens it up, and he does find out that his father has turned to stone. And in that same scene, that's when Carla shows up in really cool lighting. She stands up. She's got that hood on because she's wearing like a cloak,
Yep,
like a pretty cool looking cloak, and she has it over her head. She comes out the lightings, and then she steps into the light, and that's a cool sequence.
yep. Well,
And then
that's,
that
I like what she's wearing throughout most of the film. They did a really good job of costuming for her. She's always wearing some cool shit.
yeah. And then at that point, that's when he wants to take her out of town. He's like, "Let's go. I'm going to take you out." She freaks out, says she doesn't want to leave, and then walks away.
hmm
And then he goes back to his house, and that's when Christopher Lee's character shows up at his door with a similar lighting. He opens the door, his face is dark, and then he steps into the light. It's like,
Uh, now I can't. Now I'm gonna bring this detail up because I can't remember when it's revealed or to the audience. But the ideal that Carla doesn't want to leave at this time. It's not right for her to leave at this time. It's part of that's because of the whole full moon thing. that they bring
Yeah.
up in the film, where uh, the Gorgon is more active during the full moon. That's when the Gorgon comes out. So the villagers uh, avoid going out to the castle or going out at all because they know that she strikes at full moon. Those 3 days or so that surround the full moon, and uh,
Right, yeah, that's something we didn't talk about before. That's kind of like a kind of a connection to a werewolf or something
yes,
like
yeah,
that. Yeah, which is it's I like the full moon aspect of it. And what's interesting is like when earlier on in the film, we didn't mention this either. They're in the woods and they're looking for a Bruno's body. They're getting close to the castle. Some of the villagers are like, "Oh yeah, we probably shouldn't go this close to the castle. We should probably head back before they found the body." So
mm,
they're very scared of the castle, even though apparently it only happens during full moons, but they're still scared of it anyway.
yeah, yeah. It's one of those other story aspects that the movie borrows from like one of their other uh, creature lore. Like I say, there's a lot of connections to the vampires and the vampire stories in this film, and then there are also these connections with the werewolf though. But I think they both work for this type of film because, to be honest with you, there's not a whole lot of movies about Gorgons out there.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
So they're
yeah,
kind of creating the mythology around the Gorgons, which is cool
yeah,
because
yeah,
no one else is doing it. And at this time, I don't think anybody else
yeah.
did. I still think there's very few Gorgon movies out there.
Right. Yeah. There's not many, and I think it's a. I think they were trying to come up with a new monster too, because they at that point they were about 6 years in. Or was it about 6 years into the Hammer horror thing, and they're just trying to keep it going,
Yeah,
come up
yeah,
with something different.
yeah. Well, they had their main three franchises, so to speak, and then that was pretty much it. Everything else became like a one-off. To
Right.
be honest with
And this one included. This one was released as a double bill with The Curse of the Mummy. That's how this one was put out there.
you. Interesting.
So it
Well,
was
that's what
helped by that. Yeah. Be a good double bill.
Curse of the Mummy in this one.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll tell you if that's true after we watch the Curse of the Mummy for the show.
Yeah.
And then what's this? Meister shows up. Now, once he shows up and immediately comments on how bad Paul looks, the energy in the film changes completely from then on.
Yeah.
Christopher Lee is a take charge kind of professor, which is quite exhilarating because one of the first things he does is he goes to the police officer, the police chief or the constable or whatever they call him,
Right, yeah.
character,
Doctor Who number
inspector,
two.
Inspector
Can
uh,
off.
Kenoff,
Yeah.
Inspector Kenoff, and tells Kenoff off. Like
Yeah.
literally, he will go above his
Yeah.
head because of his position in society, and I'm
It's all it's an awesome scene too. He
it's
goes in there. But that's I mean here's the question too when we were talking about the characters changing, the protagonist changing. And and I was sort of the more I was thinking about that earlier, that we have two professors that Paul's the student of both of them. One's his dad, one's his actual teacher, and they're completely different. They get the results completely different. They both the professors have different mindsets. The second one's more successful, but he does have a lot more information going into it than the previous professor did.
yeah.
But
Well,
he also has a more authoritative type of way that he acts.
yes. Uh, because he immediately warns the inspector that he better not have a villager incident like the father had when they came crashing in and throwing bricks and torches into the window. uh, and and the inspector's not warning him to leave town. You know,
Yeah,
I
he actually he threatens him. He says, "Don't better not have that same thing happen to me."
Yeah, yeah. Which is why I say I love that scene. Unfortunately, for the rest of the movie, when the inspector shows up, he starts showing off his authority towards everyone else. But that scene's such a great scene because after that, Paul's not afraid of the inspector anymore. Paul's been like walking on eggshells until
Yeah, yeah,
Meister shows up. His mentor shows up.
right. And it's funny too because Christopher Lee shows up and you want him to have a scene with Peter Cushing, and then they really delay that scene. They actually
Well,
he actually calls when Namaroff, and he's like I want to meet with you or whatever, and he like won't meet with him. Like so, it's like it's really delayed. Like it's kind of a little frustrating, but it's kind of cool the way that when it finally does happen, it's pretty good.
no, I thought that was great. I thought these two greats in this movie, and of course the the audience is there waiting for them to have this like this big scene together, and of course it gets pushed off, and you're like, ah. And
Yeah, yeah.
when it actually does show up, it's actually quite amazing. Um,
Yeah, it is like at first it's like, are they just not going to have a scene together? You know, is it not going to happen? It's
I wouldn't be surprised if audiences literally want to see this movie just so they can have a scene together.
well,
Gee
you
whiz.
know, it's funny is like there's not that many movies that they're in where they share a lot of screen time. Most of the
No.
time, it's odd because they could have cast Christopher Lee as any of the other characters, and he would have had he would have had a lot more screen time if they cast him as as Professor Heights, or if they cast him as Paul Heights, he would have had more screen time and
Mhm.
more scenes with Peter Cushing. But I do like the way they cast him in this character, even though he looks kind of goofy. But he does it brings a lot of energy to it once he pops in, and he's
Yeah, yeah, and so now it's a kind of this weird little. It's a film with a lot of different elements going on because you have Paul who's trying to leave with Carla. Carla has these interactions with Namarov because Namarov doesn't want her to leave. He knows why. He has theories why, but he's not revealing any of that to her. So she's being kept in the dark the entire time, which is part of the tragedy of the movie. By the time we get to the end, it's a really tragic fucking movie. Uh,
yeah.
you know, and Meister just wants to get to the nuts and bolts of it all. He just wants the truth. It's funny because he believes in the whole Gorgon thing, and he relays a lot of great information that we don't already know about the Gorgon, not only to Paul
Yeah.
but to us as the audience.
I think he doesn't necessarily believe in it because he does say that he doesn't necessarily he basically says he keeps his mind open.
Yeah,
So
he does. That's right.
he's willing to accept it not being true. And this is something else I think that really helps him be successful in what he does. And he keeps his mind open where he's not going to let somebody trick him into thinking something supernatural is going to happen. But if something supernatural does happen, he's prepared to accept it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I don't know if I should bring this up now or later, but the whole we get to the actual nature of what the Gorgon actually is from listening to some of what Meister says and some of what some of the other characters say here, because this isn't like a reincarnation of the Gorgon of
Yeah, yeah, I think that's how you say it. The
Megara. It is
Megara.
the spirit.
Yeah.
It's a spirit that has inhabited someone, and that someone doesn't know she's being inhabited by the spirit, which is very interesting concept because it's like a possession story almost. With so that's a really cool aspect of the story because that's tragic, or like werewolves, where you get bit by a werewolf in these old stories, and you can't control your animalistic side. The tragedy is
Is
that this person who
yeah.
has been possessed by the spirit of the Megara doesn't know it.
Yeah, you think so is that what is that what you think I wasn't sure on that. 'Cause
That's my impression.
yeah,
That's what I
yeah.
got from like the hints they kept how the story unfolds. You know because Carla, who we all know becomes the embodiment of Megara, arrived at the town 7 years ago. She had
Yeah.
amnesia within those 2 years, and 5 years ago is when the murder started happening. So at some point, something happened to her, and she had amnesia. And then she became a patient of Namarov for. I don't think we're told how much time she was actually a patient before she became like an assistant, so to speak. Um,
Right. Yeah, I mean that makes sense that maybe she's was possessed. It is possible that she was the Gorgon all along and the Gorgon in human form. Because at one point Peter Cushing's character does say that he believes the Gorgon has taken human
Human
form,
form,
but
yes.
I mean possession makes more sense really, but I don't. It never says that. I don't
No,
think it yet, but
they don't
it
say
does.
it.
Yeah.
Peter Cushing just says he believes that the Gorgon has now taken physical human form. Um, and so that's all we have to go on. I don't know if I just interpret it as a possession because for me, Carla not knowing that she has the embodiment of the Gorgon in there is like being possessed, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's how I interpreted that. I don't really know because they don't actually spell it out to you. And
Right.
it's left.
Which is good that they don't, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, yeah.
Because
Because
there is a lot of exposition in the dialogue near the end as Christopher Lee's character and the Paul character are trying to figure it all out. But
mhm.
the way that it's done, it works in a way because of how quick things start to go from that point, and
Oh,
how
oh yeah,
it's yeah
the movie moves really fast once Meister shows up. It goes from, but yeah, because when Carla disappears from Nemirov's place, because she finally decides that she will leave with Paul. You know, Nemirov decides to have the police come and search their home, but she's not there the first time, and then later they come back again, wanting to arrest Paul for harboring her and helping her escape. Um, but
right.
both times, you know, Christopher Lee's Meister character just gives in to the police inspector. Both those times, and like,
Well, he kind of has to,
yeah,
but the
the
police, he
law.
actually, he does say things that you would normally say in a situation
Oh,
like that, like
right.
especially if you have any legal type of knowledge. Like the police comes into it in there, and Christopher Lee's character actually steps in front of him and is not going to let him pass, and then he's like, "I have a search warrant." And so
Yeah,
at that point, he has to let him in because he knows the law that
yeah,
the police has a search warrant. I can't impede an investigation. Which is he's a smart guy and he knows when if he was to continue at that point. Really, like these cops and Peter Cushing's character are crooked enough that they could like do something to him anyway. You know, it's kind of unclear how crooked they are because you never see them do anything outright in front of the other cops. So maybe some of the cops aren't crooked and maybe they are. It's kind of hard to tell. But there is a scene where he Paul goes to visit Carla at the castle in between this, and she's when he walks in, she's sitting on the throne in the castle with the hood on. I think she has the hood on, and then he at that point she's ready to go,
hmm
and he kind of is he kind of like he's like, well, and then we're getting into this investigation, so he's not quite ready to go himself, but he says that he'll meet her at the train station later on,
yeah.
which doesn't pan out, but
No,
it's
but he also makes sure to tell her that because his friend Meister is there, he also wants to get to the bottom of the whole mystery thing. Despite the fact that at one point Meister does tell him his theories, he can't believe that it could possibly be Carla.
yeah.
Because it's interesting the way he comes about it. They go to where did they go to get the information about who are new in town. Where did they go to get? They go to that one scene where they go to get all the names of the people that are new in town, and that's
Yeah,
how.
yeah. Well, that's when he goes and talks to the cop. That's what he makes him give him that information.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the cop he went to. Yeah, and
yeah,
so he gets that information. Jeez, I forgot it was the cop he was to for that information.
yeah.
And
That's why they're in there in his office. 'Cause that's what they want. But
Carla's one of the 7 people there, and so Carla's automatically on Meister's list as being a possible person that is the Gorgon. Whereas
right.
Paul can't believe that because he's fallen in love with her.
I think as an audience member, but after Martha dies, it's not many scenes after that. I think most everybody watching has figured out it's Carla because she's
Yeah,
a process of elimination. She's the only possible person it could be.
yeah, because
It's,
she's the only
uh,
female I think left.
yeah, I mean there's some minor female characters, but no one who scares is hardly in it. You know, I think there's only like a nurse near the beginning that has one or two lines, so there's not many female characters, and she's really the only possible person unless it just pulls some random person out of nowhere, which would be very unsatisfactory.
Yeah, back then, yes, I guarantee that would have been very unsatisfactory.
But
Yeah, it'd be commonplace nowadays for them to do something like that, but back then, yeah, it'd be unusual. But that being said, when you know it's Carla and you, as the audience member, is watching Paul this whole time because he doesn't want it to be Carla, he can't believe it's Carla, and I'm trying to get to where they have the last confrontation in the ruins. Uh,
well, for that, I do want to mention
you
something
were
else.
saying, yeah, yeah.
What
What do you
now?
think I'm missing? I'm missing
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah. Here's what happens. So like there's a scene where they come in there and they have the Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing scene where he comes in there with the cops, and then Christopher Lee actually has that knife that Radoff tried to kill Paul with, and he's like he's kind of pointing it at him, and he's like, "You want this knife back? Give this back to Radoff or whatever." And then the inspector comes in and he comes up behind him and he's like pointing the gun at Christopher Lee's character, and he's like, "Yeah, if you don't step away from the doctor, I'm gonna shoot you."
Yeah,
But then after that, Paul wants to leave. It's at night now, and Christopher Lee's character Meister tries to stop him, and he actually it's hilarious. He actually slaps him. He's like, no, won't let him walk out the door. He slaps Paul across the face, pretty hilariously. And then he has this look on his face like, oh man, I hate I had to do that. And then he makes him go upstairs. He sends him to his room, which at that point he
right.
sneaks out anyway out the window.
That's right.
But
Because
but,
he sneaks out to go to the ruins. That's
but then
right. I was
but then
like,
yeah, then the cops come back. And at that point they're there to get him, and then he's not there. And then there's like a scene where Christopher Lee's character like it's like some Three Stooges thing. He knocks all the cops down and runs and goes out the window too.
yeah, I was trying to remember. That was the scene I was trying to remember. I was like,
Yeah,
there's another scene in
yeah,
that
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
missing. That like the logic.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
That-
the scene before that too, I think that's really important. That plays into the end. It's the last time Peter Cushing's character talks to Carla, and she pretty much tells him off and says that she doesn't like him and she doesn't want to be romantically involved with him, and she doesn't like his controlling bullshit that he's been doing, which at that point he's got this look on his face, and that's when he changes his mind. That's what puts him in the last scene of the film when he's there at the castle with the sword,
yeah.
because like that, her rejecting him, and that's another reason why I think he was interested in her romantically, because she completely rejects him. There's no hope left for them being romantically involved, and then he has to accept that she's the Gorgon. I think he hasn't been. Maybe he knew all along, or maybe at that point he's able to accept it because he doesn't. Unlike Paul, he's not in love with her anymore because she's rejected him and he knows he doesn't have hope. So then at that point he's like, she's the Gorgon.
Yeah, I can see. I definitely see that because my thoughts were that um uh Peter Cushing's character, because I can't think of his name, Nemiroff.
Namaroff, yeah.
Nemiroff is seeing everything crumble before him. He's seeing her leave. He's seeing her go with the guy who is the outsider. And I do believe that he's known all along Carla was the Gorgon, and he's just been hiding it and like not wanting to admit to himself it's her. Um, but he also feels like he can't let her leave either. Um, and I guess it would be a bit extreme to just bring a knife to that kind of fight to chop off her head. But that being said,
That's what he does. I wonder
that's what
what
he
would
does.
have, yeah, I wonder what would have happened if she did leave. I wonder if the Gorgon would have gone with her if she was just possessed, so I guess
Interesting
we'll
question.
never know. But
No, but it's cool to see him with a sword again.
yeah.
Because
Yeah, it's like he comes in the yeah, Paul comes into the castle, and there he is in the shadows, like Namarov's in the shadows with this huge sword. And then they fight. So it's like I mean, I do have some questions because they fight, and what is he there to kill her, or is he there to kill him with a sword?
I think
So
he's there to kill her because he's going to the ruins where he knows she'll be.
yeah,
I don't think he knows Paul is going to be there. I think he knows she's going to be there.
yeah. But why? I guess they fight because Paul knows he's trying to maybe try to kill her, but it's like they have pretty good fight sequence
Yeah,
between them. It's kind of similar to the fight at the end of the horror of Dracula between Dracula and Van Helsing.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool sequence, and but then
Nemiroff does win that fight, but
yeah,
he ends up looking at the Gorgon.
right,
Um,
yeah,
which I actually forgot until I resaw the movie. So he ends up looking at the Gorgon, and of course he turns away and just falls to the ground. So we don't get to see Peter Cushing as a stone statue, unfortunately.
yeah. But
The
he's
Gorgon,
walking like you could tell he's turning to stone the way that
yeah,
he plays that when he's walking away. While this is happening, the sword has fallen on the ground, and that's when Christopher Lee's character and Meister comes and picks the sword up while Paul sees the Gorgon too. And the Gorgon, this is what you're talking about earlier, the makeup with the Gorgon. They had a lot of issues with that. They had a high aspirations for the way they wanted this to happen, but it just didn't work out. They hired this actress to play that character, Prudence Hyman, who was I think she was a ballerina or something like that. So the Gorgon was supposed to be different than the way it actually happens on screen, but because of how heavy that headpiece was, she wasn't able to do what was supposed to happen. In low budget situation, they couldn't. It didn't work out, so we got what we got at the end.
yeah, but that's the good thing is they don't show it throughout the entire film. It really is just the end. And what happens is while Paul looks at the Gorgon and sees the Gorgon for what she is, he knows he's turned to stone. He's sealed his own fate, and of course, Meister comes behind and chops off the Gorgon's head in great style, and the head falls off the body of the body, and then we slowly see the head turn back into Carla, which is a very tragic thing because Paul's watching this whole thing, knowing that it truly was Carla as the Gorgon, and that she has killed him, and he's slowly dying just like his father, just like his brother.
Yeah, and it's really sucks that he ended up seeing it, but it is a very in a tragic, effective ending. And at
Mm-hmm.
that point, like Christopher Lee says, he's like, "She's free now, Paul," and then it shows her head again. Boom, it's over. That's the end of the movie. No, no, we don't get to see Paul die. We don't see anything that happens after that.
Now we just
Uh,
know that he's slowly turning into
yeah,
a stone statue like everyone else. Uh,
yeah,
and it's a tragic ending. Like pretty much,
yeah.
yeah, everyone freaking dies except for Christopher Lee.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't kill him. It was cool they kept him alive. But that head sequence that head looks really fake, like that falls on the floor. That's probably I guess they had to do what they had to do with it, but it doesn't look that good, unfortunately. But
No,
I'm willing to forgive it. But it's that's one too where I was watching it and my wife happened to be in the room when that happened, and she had a lot of comments about how bad that looked. And I'm like,
you have to have a suspension of
yeah,
disbelief when you're watching these old school Hammer films. You have to have
yeah,
a suspension of disbelief because everything up until that moment was really well done.
yeah,
But there wasn't a Rick Baker there or a Tom Savini there to make that really pop.
yeah. You're right. This was like 1964, but the Clash of the Titans, they did it. What year was that in? The Clash of the Titans, is it?
I don't know offhand.
I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen that, but to me, I feel like it looked better in that than in
It
this.
did. It was claymation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looked really, really amazing in that movie. It still holds up. I mean, I saw the
Uh,
movie.
well, 1981, so it was a lot later than this, so that makes sense. Yeah, so yeah, it looked better from what I remember. It looked better there, but I'm willing to forgive it because that's what they had at the time, and that's the best they could do with it.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's not any worse or better than what they did for the Curse of the Werewolf, and they hid the werewolf makeup until the very, very end. That's how I saw this. And for anyone who's listening, make sure to check out our episode on Curse of the Werewolf. But it's very similar to the way they handled it in that. We don't see the werewolf at the very end of the movie because
right.
these were not very high budget films. Even for the time period, they weren't really high budget films. They were pretty low budget films for a studio just getting it's water legs. They were
Yeah.
trying to explore other things other than vampires and Frankenstein's and mummies, which were their popular bread and butter. They were trying to figure out other things. The Gorgon is not something that you would expect anyone to go out there and do a movie about. It's not.
Right, and it's I thought it was pretty effective. I think like if you've seen these Hammer films, you do kind of get this just kind of slow burn pacing. That's kind of how they do a lot of them. This one is a mystery and a love story, which is unique to this one, the love story aspect of it.
Yep.
The yeah. I think that with like a lot of the Hammer films, they have, which they don't have in this one, they have a tavern or a restaurant
Yep.
where they're able to encounter more townspeople, which they don't have in this one because the locations are that rented apartment, which has a cool aesthetic on the outside. It's like the fountains and stuff, and then the castle of the doctor's. A lot of it takes place in the doctor's medical institution
Yeah.
place, and those are really the biggest locations. They don't have the tavern or anything like that in it.
No, that's interesting. You're right. There's not a tavern in here where they use a lot of scenes the in the tavern to cover up for a lot of different locations. Um, I
We
didn't
get
notice
yeah,
that.
because the villagers actually have to show up at his house to throw those torches in there.
Yeah.
Because usually, show up there, and then you see them in the woods briefly, and then there's some smaller locations like the police station. It's just one set. You don't see the outside of it, and then there's a courtroom scene which looked a little. I don't know. What'd you think about that courtroom scene? It's maybe back then the courtrooms looked like that. This takes place, I think, it takes place in 1910. So it looked a lot different. It looked like just a regular room. So I don't know.
It was very effective back then. They
Yeah,
didn't have 12 jury systems.
yeah, yeah. They all sat around and covered up the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah, he just covers up the whole thing. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Like,
that's one of the aspects that makes this film different than a lot of the other ones. A lot of these characters have corruption within them, um, and then
right.
the
Yeah.
people who are not corrupt are the people who end up dying in this in this
You're
story.
right. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's not a typical Hammer film. There's not you just don't get that sense there. And of course, we see Peter Cushing die while Christopher Lee survives, but we don't really see what happens to him after he chops off the head of the Gorgon. He
Yeah.
just like he's not like a main character in the story. He's a
Right.
tertiary character in this story, not even a secondary character.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah, I do like the way they gave him that hero part though, and he does survive. I do like that, but it's he is a character that just kind of shows up like I guess 30 minutes before the end of it and kind of takes over briefly.
it's an oddly written format film, but nevertheless, for me it's a very entertaining film because I like the atmosphere for this film,
Yeah,
and
oh,
I
yeah,
like
yeah.
that this is one of the films for me that Christopher Lee shines in because he steals every scene he's in, as opposed
Yeah.
to some of the other films that I prefer Peter Cushing in.
But yeah, I think Peter Cushing holds this together pretty good between him and Barbara Shelley as Carla.
Yep.
Those two characters who were in the whole movie um really like I mean like I said earlier, like I really like even though he is kind of like partially a villain, I really like Peter Cushing's the way what he does in
Yeah.
this one. It's but yeah, you needed that lightness that Christopher Lee brings into it with his character. You needed that hero character to really fight the force of what's this evil force that's taken over this village.
Hmm. Yeah. So, but I will still hate the fact that a lot of these Hammer films just end so abruptly.
I've got it's funny though. It's like we've talked about the Revenge of Frankenstein, which
Yeah.
doesn't do that. That's one of the few that don't. But it almost cracks me up though when it just ends. It's just
Just
over. That's it. We're 26 minutes in. That's all we got. Yeah.
it's yeah, it's so odd to me, and I don't recall And I know I'm just going to be bringing this up more and more often as we go through more and more of the Hammer films. And this is the first time where I'm actually kind of watching a lot of the franchises in order as they were intended. But we're also watching a lot of these films all the time now, so I'm getting more inundated with what I've only read about in books about Hammer for the last 10 years or so. So, um, because unfortunately, after I would read about these movies, I wouldn't go out and watch the movies. I kind of just remembered what I saw when I first saw them. So this is a good exercise for me to kind of use some of that information when I'm watching the movie now, as opposed to then. It one of our great things about doing the show is that it allows us to reevaluate movies we hadn't seen in a very long time, and I have not seen this in a long time. Um,
Yeah.
for me, the Gorgon. I liked the Gorgon when I first saw it, and I think I've seen it twice before now. I liked the movie, but I didn't like. It wasn't like one of the Hammer films that I went back and rewatched multiple times, like The Mummy or Plague of the Zombies. It was just one of those movies I'd seen once or twice. I remember the Gorgon scene uh, because there's only been two movies like that. I know there have been more now. There have been more movies about Gorgons now. I have seen some of the crappy things produced for sci-fi original movies, and I believe they've done like maybe one or two Gorgon movies, if not more. But there's not a lot of quality ones out there. So when you look back at Hammer and they did one about this, it still rings as one of those films you should watch, one of those films you should reevaluate, especially, and then one of those films you can just sit down and enjoy because Christopher Lee steals every scene he's in.
Those Gorgons are pretty damn dangerous, though. Really, if you just look at it and you turn to stone, it's pretty messed up. There is a bit of trivia I got. Listen to that commentary
Uh-oh.
uh, um, with the head thing. The bites on the head. It actually bites from the snake when the holes are in people's heads from the Gorgon. That's what they are. Because every
Oh.
time somebody dies from the Gorgon, that's they have holes on their head. So
The snakes get a little hungry after they
yeah.
turn to stone.
I guess that's what turns them into stone, the bites from the snakes.
That is
So,
so weird.
but they happen because the snakes don't actually really bite the person, I don't think. They tend to happen like their phantom bites.
Hmm. Interesting.
But there's a lot of stuff in this film that's left open to interpretation, and there's a lot of it left unexplained in general, and even like characters' motivations are so complex that in some instances it's hard to pinpoint. But you can look to specific scenes and really what the actors did and how they played certain scenes and just some of their expressions and what they do can kind of give you clues to possible motivations. But it's a lot of it is kind of open to interpretation.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. So, what we're saying, everyone, is that you should enjoy rewatches of this movie because it can be entertaining based on multiple different interpretations of it, which is by far one of the best reasons to rewatch any movies. Because you see things that you didn't see the first time or second time, and you can come away with a different idea about the movie after you've seen it multiple different times because you see it in a different light. Dave, are there any other things you would like to talk about in regards to the Gorgon that we have not touched upon? If it is actually trivia as well, it could be trivia too.
I think I covered everything I wrote notes down on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, for everyone listening to our program, what we love to do is we love to take a few moments to kind of rate the film on our scale between 1 and 5 stars. One being horrible, 5 stars being amazing. Dave, where in the spectrum does the Gorgon fall for you?
So Uh, I really enjoy this film. I think that the special effects are kind of odd, but I do like the love story aspect. I like the complex characters. I do like Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, and like you were saying, the atmosphere. So, but like some of it like falls apart with the special effects, but not bad enough. I'm still gonna give it a 4-star rating.
Okay, this is one of those rare films where I kind of agree with you on everything you just said, and I give it a 4-star too. I don't think that the problems I have with the special effects is going to ruin this movie for me. It's something I always notice, but it just doesn't ruin it for me because this is one of my films I really enjoy Christopher Lee in. I love Peter Cushing too. Everyone knows I love Peter Cushing, like I don't know what. But Christopher Lee, who I enjoy in a lot less films, I really enjoy what he does in this film, and it's like one of those performances where he's just in it for 30 minutes, but what he brings to the whole film is so much more.
Yeah. I mean, I think another thing at first too is just like the narrative, like you're saying, it kind of goes from one person to the next. At first, that's a little. It might. I mean, I see like just analyzing it more. I see why it is that way. But at first, it may be it's a little off-putting when it keeps changing the protagonist. But you do have the other characters who are still in the town, who you see the whole film.
Well, I think it's off-putting, but I have put it. The protagonist is the Heinz family, not just one of them. He
Right.
starts
Yeah.
off with Bruno, then goes to the father, the professor, then it goes to Paul. I kind of see that as like the progression of the main character.
Yeah. It really like once I tapped into like this, the professor, both of them being professors, and Paul being the student of both of them, then that to me makes both of them make more sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And seeing like the contrast between the two professors and how they approach the situation and how one of them is unsuccessful and the other one's successful in defeating the Gorgon. I think a lot of it has to do with just being more prepared second time and having more authority, even more assertion. I think more the other guy, the first guy, the Professor Hydes, he wasn't necessarily, maybe he was being a little too aggressive with his approach in a way, but because he was definitely going for it, but he went at it in a way where he had no protection,
Yeah.
and he ended up losing his life. But he also, I don't think he like suspected supernatural forces. I think he thought there was something else going on, and he got himself in the situation he wasn't prepared for.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I get that impression too. Which is why he writes the letter he does to his son. No, I get that impression too. Okay, so with that, I want to thank you, Dave, for joining us on our conversation about the Gorgon as part of our conversation in the Hammer Studio Horrors. From everyone here at Something Wicked Entertainment, I would hope that you will all enjoyed our conversation, and please make sure to check out previous episodes because we've been delving deep into all the Hammer Studio films. So I think you'll enjoy that, especially if you're a fan of Hammer Studio films, or if you are just now taking that big leap of faith with these type of films. We hope that you do because we believe that the Hammer Studio produced a lot of great classic movies that you'll enjoy, and modern audiences can still enjoy, despite the fact that some of them were really low budget. So with that, we hope that you will also check out our main podcast, Conversations in Horror, which is every Wednesday at 8 a.m. And also check out our sister podcast, Conversations in For Color, which delves deep in manga, comic books, and graphic novels. That, unfortunately, is our Patreon-supported podcast, so you have to be a subscriber or follower in order to listen to that podcast. But we hope that you've enjoyed our family of podcasts here at Conversations in Horror. From all of us here at Something Wicked Entertainment, have a pleasant day, and we can't wait for you to see and listen to our next podcast. Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures and Something Wicked Entertainment podcast. It is hosted by Kevin L. Powers, original music provided by Dusty Ellison, produced and directed by Kevin L. Powers. Our executive producer is Kelly A. Inoka. This podcast is produced in Gwinnett County, Georgia. Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors is part of the Conversations in Horror podcast franchise and is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures. No part of this program can be used without express permission from Broken Lighthouse Pictures.